Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Foundry Virtual Tabletop development update and Q&A stream here with our dev team. Really excited that you're all here. Hope you're having a great week, and thank you for spending some time with us to talk about the software and all the exciting things that we are up to in version 12. I hope my my volume is coming through well to all of you out there in Twitch land. Give me some feedback if the levels seem good. I'm happy to bring in some of the other devs from the team. And Kim also will be joining us in a little bit, but let's all say hi. And I think we could also start with just a quick little introduction because we're not always here together. And so, I'll just get started. I'm Andrew, also known as Atropos on Discord, and happy to. I think probably you recognize me from these streams, but if this is your first time, then I am the original creator of Foundry Virtual Tabletop, although it is now very much a team effort to continue building and creating the software. And I'm joined by two of the four, and soon to be all four of our dev team. So we're all going to be with you today to talk about what we're doing with version 12. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Eber, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. Excuse me. I'm Eberhard, also known as Dev and all the numbers afterwards. I'm the newest team member. I joined in May this year, and
I think
been
Dan
very
has
busy
has that privilege now.
Right.
You've been usurped.
From the developers at least. Yeah. Very excited to show you all the stuff we have been working on.
Yeah, you joined us as we were kind of really just wrapping up V11. I think we'd already done all of the development work on V11, and you kind of were able to join like right when we were going to stable with it. And so, I remember at the time we got you just basically like, let's get some bugs fixed, like last minute bug fixes and stuff before V11 stable. But because of the timing when you joined the team, you didn't have like a lot of opportunity yet to sort of like exert your influence on the software. And I think that V12 is a very different story, where V12 has your has your influence very strongly represented in it, and that's been an exciting thing to see, to see come along. But yeah, so anyways, Eber, happy to have you here joining with the stream and hanging out with everyone. And Ludovic, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Ludovic. You know me as Secret Fire on Discord. And I'm a software developer for maybe 2 years now for Foundry. Time is going fast.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to join Eber and Andrew on this stream. I'm not used to, but it will be fun.
Yeah, we have a fairly international dev team. So I'm in the US, and then we have Germany, France, and the UK all represented on the dev team, and then we have other folks on the team elsewhere as well. So it's cool to be able to to work with such a sort of international team. Although I will say that the two of you tend to work very like US hours, because you're both sort of night owls, and so the fact that you work later works very well for me. I'm gonna put on a little bit of like subtle background music, and I'm gonna adjust the volume so that it does not overwhelm anything that we're saying, hopefully. So folks, let me know as I turn that on if it's, a little bit too much or too little. Should just be a little subtle background ambience courtesy of Ian from Tabletop RPG Music. Excellent stuff. I've turned it down just a little, so we'll see if how folks are feeling about that. I can probably go lower as well, but the volume levels look pretty good on my mixer, but I don't know what people are, are gonna sounds good to me. All right, we'll see. We'll adjust as we go. And then Kim, the fourth of our dev team, is going to join as well as soon as a meeting that they're in is going to finish up. So we'll look forward to having Kim join us in just a bit. Fantastic. So what we're going to talk about today is version 12. It is not yet stable. It is not yet anywhere close to stable. It's not yet even to the prototype phase. But we are working hard to get to prototype 1, the first prototype release of version 12 that I expect to be available, in early December. Exactly how early December, TBD. But it's coming up, and that first prototype release will be a first opportunity for our module dev community to check out firsthand some of the amazing changes that we've made, and to give us feedback and help us further improve the way that we are doing things and the changes that we're making for V12. But in today's stream, we're going to talk about what some of those changes are. We're going to showcase some changes. We're going to talk about what's coming up next. And I think we'll just we'll go ahead and jump into it. I'd love to talk a little bit about version 11.5, because that is something that we've released since our last dev stream, and it deserves a bit of discussion. But I'll wait for Kim to join to do that, and I think we can move on to start talking about V12. And when Kim gets here, we'll find an opportunity to comment on the cool stuff that we did for version 11 recently. All right, a few caveats before we jump in. There will be bugs. This is a pre-prototype build of the software that you're looking at and that we're going to be showing. We're absolutely expecting some bugs in a prototype release, and especially some bugs before a prototype release. So some things might not work, live demos and whatnot, but nothing's pre-recorded here. We're just gonna showcase stuff, and if bugs happen, bugs will happen, and we'll all have a good laugh about it. I also would point everyone towards our GitHub project board. If you are interested, you don't have to look at it, but I'll just put it up on my screen here. The sort of prototype 1 tab of the GitHub project board is something that you all can look at if you want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of like what exactly we're doing at the moment. This is public, you can check it out, and this is sort of the underlying data of the stuff that we've done that we're going to talk about today. One other little disclaimer is that actually not a disclaimer. I just want to give a quick overview of, remind everyone what the scope and the focus areas of V12 are. There's a number of things that we're focusing on. The first one is the community voted feature that won our Patreon prioritization vote, that is scene regions. And scene regions is a very exciting tool that we unfortunately will not be showing today, because the way that our prioritization has shaken out, scene regions will be completed as part of prototype 2. But we will have part of it in prototype 1, some of the underlying data models type stuff. But we'll be showcasing scene regions in prototype 2. But what you can expect from that is the ability to define areas of the scene that will have certain behaviors. So what I'm about to show is not scene regions. It is simply me trying to convey a little bit of the idea of what scene regions will be like. Suppose you're able to, define a certain polygon and say, this is going to be a region where when you're in this region, maybe the game gets automatically paused when you enter it, or when you enter it, these two Spriggan gladiators who were previously hiding will, unhide and pop out at you, or there's no weather in this region, or it's difficult terrain. So the ability to define certain areas of the scene that have certain behaviors is essentially what we're going to do with scene regions. But the work's not done yet, and so I don't want to overpromise or underdeliver, so I'll stop talking about it now. But that is a key area of focus for V12, and that's something that's going to be very exciting to showcase once we get to Prototype 2. Other key areas of focus for V12 are ones that we feel very strongly about prioritizing as things that either add a lot of great functionality to the software, or ones that are really critical infrastructural improvements that we need in order to strengthen the quality of the software and continue maintaining it and improving it. So we're going to talk about scene environments, very exciting work there. We're going to talk about a redevelopment of primary canvas objects. We'll call V2 of that API. It's a little bit technical, but there's some very cool features that we can show as a result of that. We're working on application V2, which I know has been long rumored and mooted and theorized about, but has not yet made manifest. But we are working on application V2, and it's going to be a cool new way to render HTML and HTML applications in the software. We have a redesign of our Grid API, Grid V2. We have a Dice API v3 that's planned for Prototype 2 that isn't going to change the API much, but it will change the way we do some of the parsing and allow us to better support externally fulfilled roles, whether it's like from Bluetooth devices or rolling manually or things like that. That's going to be exciting. And then we also have an audio API update that adds a bunch of really cool tools and techniques for audio. So a lot of like big themes in V12, and ones that we're really excited about. We've each had certain areas of focus that we've kind of been dividing and conquering on this list of stuff, and it's allowed us to get a lot done, and a lot that's really exciting done. So that's a quick overview, and we can go ahead and jump in. I think we should start talking about primary canvas objects. So this is something that probably most folks might not know what we even mean when we say a primary canvas object, because normally what we talk about is tokens and tiles and drawings. But I don't know, Eber or Ludovic, do one of you want to try and talk a little bit about like what are primary canvas objects and how do they differ from, say, a token or a tile?
Yeah, sure. So first, you have to understand we have multiple groups. We have the primary group, and we have environment group, rendered group, and an interface group. And these are all nested in each other. And the primary is basically everything you see except UI, and whether it's basically tiles, tokens, the background, foreground image, and stuff like that. And in the primary group, also contains weather effects or other things, everything that's basically that exists in the world you're playing in. Mm-hmm. And then we have the interface group sits on top of that. That's all your HV bars and stuff like that. That's not really in the world. And primary canvas objects are all the objects, the pixie objects that live inside this container. And so a token is more than just its sprite. Yeah, it's all the other things that are attached to it, and the primary object is just the visual element of the token.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, like what we're talking about is a situation where we have everything that sort of exists in the world, hypothetically, like everything that is a sort of real object in our space, like this tree canopy tile or this Spriggan token or a drawing that represents a fallen log that you just sketched. These are objects that exist in the primary canvas group that are things that are rendered in the game environment. And so they're affected by things like lighting, they're affected by, they might be affected by vision or collision testing, things that actually represent the real in-game environment that we're modeling. And so tokens, tiles, drawings are examples of things that can be in this group, weather effects as well. And then from an API perspective, you can put anything you want into this group. You can draw a sprite or a video texture or a graphic that as an API developer, you can also put that object into this primary group, and then it becomes part of what is rendered in the world. And it has a coordinate position and an elevation and all things like that. And that's what allows us, when we have a light source or a vision mask or something, that we can apply those concepts to everything that is a real object inside the world. Let me pause for a second and say welcome, Kim. Glad you were able to join us.
Hi, thank you.
But anyway, so the API enhancement for primary canvas objects, for PCO as we internally abbreviate them sometimes, V2, is an improvement to the APIs of how we're rendering these meshes, these sprites, that improves upon their features, their functionality, the quality of the API, the consistency of the API, making it better and easier for developers, whether it's us or our module developers, better for those developers to work with these API concepts. And I know that's all a little bit technical, and so there, we can maybe showcase a few of like the cool things that are now possible to do as a result of these API improvements. And I was thinking a fun place to start might be with some of the like hover fading behavior for overhead objects. That's kind of a nice thing that can help you appreciate a change in how Foundry actually works. So what you're seeing on the screen now is an outdoor map from one of our adventures, A House Divided. It's an adventure we're very proud of, but this is a sort of Feywild, hedge maze type area. One of the things that's a little bit tricky with Foundry in V11 is that placing objects overhead, you get these nice occlusion behaviors when a token is underneath them. But as a game master or as a player, it's difficult to like appreciate like what's underneath this roof or what's underneath this tree canopy unless you happen to be there already. And so one of the big changes that we've made is that all of these occludable objects that are in the overhead or elevated region of the canvas, you can now just hover over them. And when you hover over them, they fade away just as if you had a token underneath that object. So, the roof of this building, it allows you as the game master to appreciate, oh, this cottage has this sort of three concentric shingle roof, and I wonder what's inside. I can just hover over it and see that, oh, here's the Red Scullion sort of diabolical, hag cottage with all of the evil machinations going on. Or I can peek underneath this tree, or I can see, oh, the greenhouse roof. What's going on with all of our little sprites in the greenhouse? I can just have it fade away just via hover. And of course, it still works that when you are actually like controlling a token under the roof, then you don't have to hover. So if my mouse cursor is outside the roof, if I still have a token controlled underneath that roof, it's still giving me the hover behavior, like the occlusion behavior automatically. The hover is only used when you can like look at something else in addition to say what your token is already controlled. So it's a really nice quality of life improvement for working with overhead objects and multiple roofs and things like that. It just makes it a whole lot easier to use. And it's very intuitive because you don't have to like work with any UI. You just kind of move your mouse around and things sort of work I guess, the way you would expect them to. So yeah, that's one that we're really excited about. I don't know, Eber, I started work on this a little bit because I was getting a little bit frustrated with the way that our roofs worked, and then Eber kind of took up the banner and further improved it. And Eber, why don't you say a little bit, like, it's not just roofs anymore. It's like all occludable tiles, and it might even be like flying tokens, like a flying dragon with a very wide wingspan or something. Why don't you talk a little bit about where the scope of this could go?
Yeah, probably everyone that played in a game where there were tree tiles was probably annoyed if their token was not under the tree, but I don't know, the enemy token was under the tree, and technically, from the perspective of the token, you would see what's under the tree, right? If it's not behind the trunk. But of course, you as the player have the top-down perspective, and so from your perspective, the tree was in the way. And well, we have different occlusion modes. We have fade, like if you step under it, the entire thing fades. Radial, where's the radial cut, circle cut into the tile above, and we have vision. And if you wanted the player to see what the token sees, you would have been forced to choose the vision occlusion mode. But if you choose the vision occlusion mode, then you basically never see the tile, because like if you see what's under the tree, then you don't see the leaves anymore. So that's also a downside. So, and now with this, you can choose your fade occlusion for the tree, and your players that are not under the tree can still hover the tree and see what's under it. So it's
and the amount of the fade, it's linked to however you've configured the occlusion alpha of the tile. So like if I turn the occlusion alpha of the tile all the way to 0, then when you hover over it, it's completely faded, or when you're controlling a token under it, it's completely faded. So it's up to you how you want to represent that, whether you want, say, the overhead object to be partially transparent or fully transparent. You can configure whatever occlusion alpha you want, and that affects the hover behavior also. Another cool thing that I think relates to this that we could show, obviously, like, this one nice thing about this is that it affects any number of objects, right? So you could have like multiple roofs overlapping, or like here's a place where we have like a tree and the roof kind of come together, and I mean it's barely that, so I have to like pick the right pixel, but I can like choose a pixel, if maybe there's a better example somewhere, but like you can see like both the tree and the roof will fade away, if you're hovered in a location that is common to both to both overhead tiles. So it's not limited to just one, which is very cool. All right, moving on just slightly, although there's more we could talk about this. We could talk about elevation a little bit. So we've added more configurability to elevation. Previously, we had elevation support for tokens and for tiles, of course, and that's what configures, like, is your token above the treetop or below the treetop. But we now also have elevation for drawings, right? That we didn't have before.
Yes, we have elevation for everything except walls now, I think. So,
yeah, walls is the tricky one that will be part of sort of scene levels in the future, but everything except walls is now supported. So like with this drawing, if this is like a lake of goop underneath the Spriggan, it's at elevation 0, it's on the ground, or I could bump this drawing up to elevation 10, and now the drawing is over top of the, these Spriggans, but it's below Silvaria over here that's up at elevation 40. So you get really nice sort of layering of where your what the elevation of your drawing is. You can bump things up or down. That's a nice new feature. And as you mentioned, it's not just drawings, it's also things like measured templates. So if we have like a fireball effect, we could say that this fireball detonated like 20 feet up in the air, and it's in the data model that it knows the elevation of that, and we get a tooltip on the control icon that identifies that that it is at a heightened elevation, so you can keep track of that as well. So yeah, better elevation controls for all of our things.
There's no mechanical consequence of changing the elevation in core, but there are some modules out there that will appreciate the elevation being part of the data model, and
this makes it possible for modules to do better things in V12, and it also makes it possible for us to do more both in V12 and onwards as we move ahead and think about doing like more formal sort of scene levels, multi-level in the future that won't be part of V12, but adding this sort of official framework for tracking elevation of all things in a very consistent way is something that, as you said, it will be very appreciated for any modules that want to kind of get out ahead of where the core is in that regard. Awesome. Another thing we could showcase with PCO V2 is improvements to token stacking. That's a really exciting one. Some lightweight house divided spoilers here, but the adventure's been out for quite a while now, so I feel a little bit less bad about. I used to be very resistant to like using house divided maps on streams because I didn't want to spoil anything, but I feel a little bit less resistant to that now, so we can showcase some of the pretty things we have. So suppose there's like a sort of flying dragon with like a flying wingspan like this, and maybe you have your hero who's on the ground here, and you're playing a combat encounter, and the dragon swoops down to elevation 0, and sort of swoops. The dragon swooped under the token. Not ideal. So we have better control over the visual stacking of tokens now. It's very easy with either a single hotkey, like I've just done. I can pop the token above or below others in the vertical stack, or also via the HUD. There are now sort of bring to front or send to back buttons in the token HUD. So I can, drop the dragon beneath this token if the token is riding on the back, or I can pop the dragon above the token if the dragon is swooping overhead. And that is in the data model, so it applies to all, it applies to all players. It's not just adjusting your visual view, but it's synchronized to everybody, so everybody sees the same thing in terms of is the dragon partially over the hero or underneath the hero. And so the key bindings for that we added are by default. You can always change them, but they are by default the square bracket keys. So send objects to back, bring objects to front, left and right bracket. We wanted to choose a key binding that was a little bit far enough away from WASD or the arrow keys that you might not hit it by accident, since it can kind of cause a potentially unexpected change in the way that the scene is presented. So we felt like this was a nice key binding that accomplished both making them very accessible to easily make those adjustments on the fly while avoiding a misclick. And then of course you can always change it in the token HUD very easily as well. I don't know, Eber, you worked on this feature also. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to spotlight with this one in particular.
Not really. I think you covered it all. We are thinking about improvements, if the dragon is now overhead, right, over the token, you have trouble selecting it, right, because the the dragon is above it, and yeah, we're thinking about a solution for this problem so that you can select tokens that are underneath the token that's at a higher elevation without needing to move the dragon in this case out of the way. But yeah, it's a bit trickier than the sword at the same elevation thing you presented.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this problem with the elevation is not addressed by the bring back and push to back buttons. Yeah.
It's a great change, though. Really good little quality of life improvement.
Yeah, definitely for the dead tokens.
Yeah, good for dead tokens to just push them out of the way. Another one that we have that's very exciting is also a PCO improvement, has to do with improved control over texture fit. So I can show like a nice example of this one, maybe with like I think the centaur is an example that I really like here. So what we have here is a sort of a centaur token, and in the token configuration, we can have now more control over the fit of the texture and the anchor of the texture. So the default fit is contain, which means that the texture image will be fully contained within the bounding box of the token before any additional scaling factor is applied. But there are other modes like fill where, that doesn't look great here, but that's because this base image artwork is not square. And so fill, it's going to completely fill the texture as you would with a sort of a fill mode in Photoshop or something. Contain, as you already saw. Cover is an interesting one where it's going to use the smaller of the two dimensions to ensure that the frame is fully covered. In this case, the width is smaller, so the image is enlarged for to fully cover the frame. Full width, the same as cover in this case because the width is the smaller dimension. Full height would be the same as contain in this case because the height is the smaller dimension. But you have this greater degree of control, and everything works also with token scaling. So you can have whatever fit mode you want, and then also you can further scale it beyond that. So probably in terms of order of operations, you want to choose the fit mode first and then choose whatever further scale adjustment. Although, you can make your own workflow, but that's the workflow that I would suggest that you do. And a related change is we also now have customization over the image offset position, which is really cool when you have a piece of token art where like the center of mass of the token is not the center of the texture image that contains it. So this could be like a creature with a really long tail where, sometimes when you use a token of a creature with a really long tail, it pushes like the center of mass of the token all the way to the bottom of the frame. You now have more control over the offset. So like I can, for this centaur, I can bump the texture offset further back. Like if I want the centaur's center of mass to be, further back in the square, but where the tail's kind of coming out the back, you can do that and you can adjust that offset. And, you notice like, when the token rotates, it rotates around that adjusted offset anchor. So you get like something that's a little bit more, maybe like tactically authentic, regardless of the way that the token texture was drawn. You have these greater controls to be able to, to offset them to make sure that they fit in the token space the way you want. Something that also would be hugely important, I think, for isometric, right, Eber?
Yeah, or like if you want a little bit of a fake perspective, and if it's just not an isometric grid necessarily, but you want it to look like the isometric perspective. You want to change your anchor so that your assets basically stand with their feet in the center of the grid space. Yeah. Another example would be like if you have a animated weapon or something, and you want the weapon to rotate around the handle and not the center of the sword or something, like that's also a case where changing the anchor is nice.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this like awesome Merilith token. These are Forgotten Adventures tokens, of course. Like the Merilith is a cool example where like the creature's frame. Now, FA has gone to a lot of trouble to already sort of pad the frame, so they've kind of already done some of the work to counteract this. Other token artists might not have quite done as much already, but maybe even so, maybe you want to shift the Merilith like a little bit further back, so that the body is really in the center, and it's really just the tail that sort of is sticking out the back of the frame, and then you get sort of this nice sort of center of mass based rotation, regardless of the underlying texture. I see people asking about the grid snapping. We'll get to the grid snapping. We'll get to. I promise we'll get to the grid snapping.
I was just gonna say I always have this problem with one of my players who has a really long halberd.
Yeah. A really long weapon is another example. Like you can use this offset to really position their torso right in the center of the grid space.
Yeah, it's always off to the side. Otherwise, it's super annoying.
Yeah. Awesome. There's a number of other great consequences, side effects of PCOV2 that are maybe a little bit more like API centric. I don't know, Eber, is there anything else about PCOV2 that you'd specifically like to spotlight before we move on?
Well, maybe we can show off roof occlusion. It works the opposite way now. So if you have a light source that's above a roof, the light won't illuminate the area below the roof.
Yeah, so here we've got this cottage, and there is, I think, not currently a light source in where there is, but I'll disable it. So suppose I'll just turn off the light sources in the cottage, and maybe I'll turn the darkness level up just to make it a more obvious effect. Okay, so here we have no light inside the cottage, and what you want us to do is we're going to add a light source above the roof. So I'll add like a bright green light that is at elevation, let's say 40. So here we have this light that is above the roof, and I probably want to make it at this point, if it's that kind of light, maybe I want it to be unconstrained by walls, might be a good thing to do. If it's something that's very high up, I could uncheck unconstrained by walls. And so there's a glowing ball of green light in the sky. But it's not inside the cottage because the cottage has a roof. Lo and behold, that's awesome.
Yeah, of course it's just visuals, right? We don't have scene levels yet, and so we don't make any like line of sight checks depending on the elevation and stuff. So, but yeah, you can use this to create some nice visual effects.
Yeah, this is a great addition. I'm ashamed that I didn't think to put it on my list of stuff we should show. So I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, that's a great ad. Cool. All right, well, let's move on.
We are preparing the terrain. We are preparing the terrain for levels.
Yeah, we aren't able to fully take on scene levels in V12. There's too much to do, but we are really developing everything that we're doing in V12. We're developing it sort of thinking ahead towards what those requirements will be, so that we'll be in a good position to do scene levels. I'm not going to commit that it will be 13, but we would be in a good position to do it in 13 if we choose to, or if it's voted upon by the community. So we're doing some of the prep work now.
I will just add something about the PCO. There is this is for module or system developers. You must know that now it is possible, for example, to have a huge token and to have this token occludable, for example. So there is just some API things to make these things happen, but you could. So if you move a token behind another token, you could have occlusion happening like a roof, for example.
Yeah,
This is done by the API,
it's sort of a
but
little
it is
bit more
possible.
theoretical in that it requires some API modification, but it is technically possible, and so modules can do it, and it's possible that by the time that V12 gets stable, we may add some interface for it as well, but you know, that might come later. We'll have to debate the merits of adding some UI for that, but Chaos, I do think that, and sorry to chat, I know we're not like answering too many questions yet. We'll maybe take a break at halftime or something and do a round of Q&A. That is part of the goal for today, but we just have a lot to show. But Chaos asks, are we suggesting that scene levels will be a voting option for V13? I don't really want to like promise anything because it's very, like, we have a lot of V12 development still to go, and the V13 vote won't be happening until like midway through next year or something. But I think it's a very good chance that scene levels will be an option for consideration in V13. Kim, we skipped over 11.5, waiting for you. Do you want to give a little bit of a quick intro to the V11.5 work before we continue on with new V12 features? I caught you right when you were grabbing a bite. Sorry about that.
It's fine, yeah. Sure. The backups work was the first one we did for 11.5, and that one I think is a little bit more, should be more familiar to most people. Since we've had it for a while now, it's quite prevalent. You should get prompts for it now whenever you upgrade your systems, and also you will get a prompt when you upgrade your Core Foundry version, though that hasn't. Well, I suppose we've done smaller releases, but we haven't done a big release. But basically, backups it allows you to take a backup of any world, module, or system that you have, and you can restore it. You can manage those backups, clear them out. You can add notes to them to remind yourself about why you took the backup in the first place. You can also see what the version of the package was when you took the backup. Useful stuff like that, so that if there's a system migration, for example, and all of your data gets changed and it's not compatible, or there's some problem with it, or your modules aren't up to date yet, you need to go back, you can do that very easily now. You can just restore the latest backup, go back to where you were. And in addition to that, we have this concept of snapshots, what we call snapshots, where you take a copy of every single module, every single system, every world, the whole thing, which can be a lot of data if you have lots of images and videos and audio and stuff. So be careful with that. But a snapshot allows you to take a copy of all of those things, which will be pretty useful when you're going to new versions. So it hasn't happened yet, but when V12 releases, before you download V12, you can take a snapshot of everything. You can just load up V12 without having to worry about anything. Load it up, see how it's working, see if your modules are all compatible or not. And if not, you can, if it comes to it, and hopefully it shouldn't, but if it comes to it, you can roll back everything, uninstall V12, reinstall V11, click restore snapshot, and get everything back to how it was before. And I think that's a pretty good segue into the next feature, which is the compatibility previewer. So you're probably less familiar with this feature because that is really more useful for when you're updating the core software version only, but that will take a look at our package repository, and for other packages that have manifests, it will like follow the manifest links, and it will find what the latest versions of those packages are, and it will tell you whether those have been verified as compatible in the version that you're attempting to update to or previewing the update to. So before you even go through the process of taking your snapshot and downloading the next version and installing it and loading up your worlds, before you even do any of that, you can just preview and see if, oh, my system isn't ready in the next version, or this module that I use that's super important isn't ready in the next version. So I'll just hold off for a little bit until those are ready, and you can just hit that preview compatibility button whenever you want, see the state of everything. A bit of a smaller feature than backups, but those are all now out and released in V11 and ready for the update to V12.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, really, is that we really wanted to get those features added to V11 before starting the V12 cycle, because we want to make, we want to do whatever we can to help users have a V10 or V11. Well, I guess it would have to be V11 in order to have those features, but have a V11 to V12 update journey that is less stressful and easier to understand what the consequences of making that update would be, and easier to mitigate any consequences if for whatever reason you need to go back to where you were. I think those are really important things. 20 Digera asks, can you use the backup and restore like in a different Foundry instance or different data folder to like transfer a world from one to another? You could actually, I think, yeah. I mean, you could also use a snapshot for that. Like you could use a snapshot to sort of bootstrap an entire Foundry instance. You can also, of course, just copy stuff in your data folder directly. So this isn't opening a way of like transferring data that didn't already exist, but it could be slightly more convenient, I suppose, to transfer like a single snapshot archive than to individually transfer a bunch of things. It's possible.
I think snapshots you have to be careful with because they are actually stored as separate backups.
I see someone asking how you get uncapped frame rate. So if you want frame rate that's like whatever the refresh rate of your monitor will allow, in settings you just have to set your performance mode to maximum. So if you're at a lower than maximum performance mode, it caps at 60 FPS, but if you set your performance mode to maximum, it's uncapped, and it will refresh at whatever refresh rate your monitor will tolerate.
That's a really good vignette.
Yeah,
probably my favorite from the adventure.
One of my favorites too, for sure.
Yeah.
So back on. Thank you for that summary, Kim. Those V11 enhancements are super great. Let's get Ludovic involved. I want to talk about scene environments. This is one of the features I'm most excited about in V12. I think it's super powerful. Ludovic, do you have a particular scene that you want to use to showcase this, or is this one, the grounds here, good? Or
it is good. The ground, it is okay, I think.
All right, I'll make some changes first on my end so that the viewers can sort of see what I'm doing, and then I'll turn it over to you to play with in the background. So the UI here isn't final. We're going to continue working on the UI, but what scene environments allows you to do is, we talked previously about the primary canvas group and like all of the objects in the world that are tangible, real objects in the game space. what scene environments allows you to do is provide a unifying set of transformations to the entire scene, not just the background map, not just a single token, but everything in the scene in a way that unifies that visual effect for the ambience, the environment of the scene. And so when we go to scene configuration here, on the ambience tab, we can go to environment lighting, and we have really robust control over the visual aesthetic of the overall environment. So we can adjust the luminosity, we can make the whole scene much darker or much lighter, and this interacts with the darkness level. It is sort of, here we're configuring, you might almost think of this as sort of like configuring the daytime version of the scene. If we want like a very bright, very sunny day, or we want like a very gloomy day, even when you're at darkness level 0, you can adjust the luminosity. We can adjust the saturation. Maybe we're suddenly in, monochrome world where the entire scene is grayscale. You've stepped into a dreamscape, and all the colors are desaturated, and you're having this sort of dream sequence. The great thing here is that it's not just desaturating part of the scene like with a light source, or it's not just desaturating just the background image. It's desaturating everything, including all of the tokens in the scene. So, often as like a map creator, you might say, oh, I'm going to need to take this map and open it in Photoshop and do some Photoshop processing of the map so that I can get this like gloomy, desaturated scene that I want. But then you use that Photoshop transformation of your gloomy, desaturated scene, and you drop like a really brightly colored token in it, and it sort of like ruins the illusion because the tokens and the tiles that you use in that scene are not similarly transformed. So this allows you to provide like a really unifying transformation across everything in your scene: tokens, tiles, drawings, the scene background and foreground image. Everything is transformed with a single set of sliders. We can deepen and intensify the shadows. We can, and then this is probably my favorite part, we can pivot the entire hue of the scene. So if we want like a very red, the blood red forest, we can pivot the entire coloration hue of the environment, or we can have, emerald green land. And we can have your entire, you're in the Emerald Dream. That's trademarked. You're in the, whatever it is that you're in. That is, not, Blue World or Barbie Land. That's also trademarked. I'm just stepping in it now. You get the idea. You are in all of these different environments that have a really distinctive color palette. You can configure those color palettes with this slider that applies to your tokens, your background, your foreground, everything in the scene all at once. And to make things even better, you have a separate set of sliders that applies to your darkness ambience. So not only can you customize what the daytime, so to speak, looks like, but you can also customize how the scene looks when it gets very dark. So for example, say we want the red blood moon. We want it to be dark, but we also want it to be red. We can make the luminosity lower, we can make the hue intensity a strong red, and then when we transfer the scene to darkness, we're going to transfer into the red blood moon instead of the purple sort of regular nighttime that you are accustomed to. Obviously I maybe didn't preview it as effectively as I could have, but yeah, you can see here when we're at maximum darkness level, we have like a very saturated red environment of nighttime, or a sort of very blue, very bluish or purplish nighttime intensity that you can customize those however you would like. So there's my intro to this feature. I don't know, Ludovic, I want to hand it over to you because this is your excellent work on making this happen. What would you like me to to showcase, or do you want to just like
Yeah.
play around while I talk a bit more? Or
Yeah, as you pinpoint, this is really to have different ambient for every times of the day. For example, by example, if you have a darkness level 0 and you are into the exterior and it is a very sunny day, then you need to add vibrance, to add exposure to your map. So you will just shift the luminosity higher, then to simulate the
the
sun,
brightest day possible.
the brightest day possible.
My monitor.
with a yellow-white tint, for example, to simulate the brightness of the sun during a
We're
sunny
walking
day.
on the
Put
sun.
your
Yeah, we're
sunglasses.
walking on the sun here.
Yeah, so it is possible. Exactly. You could do the same with the night. For example, is it a full moon with a beautiful moonlight tending to the blue-white, blue-gray? It is a red moon. Are you on another planet where maybe something completely different happened during the night or during the day? Is there a day or a night even? Because we could still put another option with the darkness lock. But yeah, this is the really this is the aim of the ambient, is to have, you could do everything into Foundry. You don't have to modify your assets into an image editor. You can do it directly into with the UI here to the same configs.
Yeah, and I
It
saw a
was
great
the
question in
purpose.
chat about like what happens when the darkness level is at an intermediate value, and that it's exactly right what the
Yeah.
you know
So
what let's see who was it, nonchalant wombat asked in chat, is that it's an interpolation between, it's a mixing between the two ambience settings that configure how you shift between them. So at darkness 0.5 you're mixing between both the dark ambience and the base ambience, and you get a blending of those two configurations. So you can see here at darkness 0.5 the hue that I'm choosing from the base ambience also still affects, but it's not purely that hue. What you're getting is a mix between the daylight hue and the darkness hue. So you get a very gradual transition between those two states.
yeah, we have a transition between these two states according to the darkness level, but you have also the option to disable this this interpolation. You can show, you know, we have a checkbox enable cycling. You can disable, you can uncheck this option, and then for every darkness level we're just using the base ambience.
Yeah, that's right. So here in this example where we disable cycling between them, you're gonna stay at this emerald green, Shamrock Shores. You're gonna stay here regardless of what darkness level you have. Now you do get brighter and darker, so the darkness level still applies, but you're no longer cycling between two different environments. You're just staying on the same. You're staying with the same base configuration, and you're just adjusting only the darkness level. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of whether you want like a different night versus day, or whether you just want sort of one environment for your scene that just gets brighter and darker. So there's flexibility both ways. This is really cool stuff. I love it. I'm sure everyone is going to really love it. I think it just brings so much like fun to like, what is the story that you want to tell? And it makes your maps so flexible too, because you may have a map from a cartographer that you really love, but because it was drawn in a certain way or with a certain color palette, it just doesn't quite fit the narrative moment that you're wanting to tell. Someone might say like, oh, I love this. Let me find an example here. I love this creepy sort of spider tree. But I really wish that it was, I want it to be in the winter Fae instead of in the sort of ruined area. So you could say like, well, let's take the darkness level down and let's send our hue to like an ice blue, and then suddenly we feel like we have the, we can turn shadows up a little bit and, play with it, play with whatever you want. But now maybe you feel like you have suddenly this sort of wintry environment that wasn't at all the way that the map was drawn. That's just, you've taken a map that you had and you've made it work better for the story that you're telling. I think that's really cool.
One important thing to say is that it is affecting only the primary canvas group. So lightning and effects are not affected. But they will be affected by the background, in the sense that our dynamic lighting is are computed according to the background pixel. It will be the case, but uniforms and values directly into the light will not change. The colors will not change.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to point out. And like, to go back to my sort of winter webs example here. Let me see a good way to show that. Let's do like this. We'll do a little bit more luminous. So if you have this sort of transformation of the map, and then you put down, say, a light source that is bright red, that red transformation happens after the environment transformation. So, if your scene was already red, this will now be an even more vibrant red light, whereas if your scene is this sort of ice white blue, so the order of operations is that light sources apply after the environment transforms. So a blue light in this sort of blue transformed environment is going to be very, very intense. And so that's just, I guess, something that's good to know, in that the lighting then affects, interacts with the environment in that particular way. Really awesome stuff.
Another example, you can basically transform any scene into an underwater scene by taking out some of the saturation and then mixing in some of a blue tint.
Prove it.
It's similar to the.
Can we take our grounds and I don't know. I don't believe that this map can be underwater. What am I doing here?
Take out saturation.
Okay. Desaturate. All right. Done.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, and then mix in some blue.
Okay. Let's put some blue. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. I mean, obviously it doesn't have a water effect.
Yeah, that's the only part that's missing.
But yeah, I could believe that we're now in a sunken hedge maze instead of in a we're exploring the sunken ruins, as it were. That's really cool stuff. All right.
In prototype 2, we have planned to add animation for ambience.
Ooh, even more visual candy. I love it. That's going to be very exciting. So that's scene environments. Let's talk about the new audio API. Very exciting stuff. I'm going to go into an interior location here. The new audio API is designed to be really great to work with for developers. and it also adds some...
The oak and the reed.
Oh, sorry. Whoa. That was an unintended speaker blowout. Let me check what that volume level was coming from. I apologize to everybody in chat. I've just slayed you. Yep, sorry, folks. That was an audio balancing gaffe.
And the reed.
Let's see here. My bad. Just making sure everyone's awake. Making sure everyone's with us.
Lightning filled the sky when an old oak whose age had fallen.
Very sorry. So this is a fun little location in the Feyward Manor of House Divided.
From his roots at last.
Where this satyr is reading a set of fables to an assembled audience.
Ample waters soon conveyed.
God, yeah, sorry about that, everyone. So one of the cool things that can be done with the new audio improvements is that every audio source can have configured certain special effects that are applied to it. So I could take that same narration of the voice that was in this room, and I could give it like a very sort of intense reverb if it's echoing in a vaulted chamber, and here's the difference.
Which made my stubborn limbs give way.
Maybe we could just turn down the music
Yeah,
behind.
let me pause the music for a moment. It's a great call.
Aged friend, I do not break because I
So now suddenly our sound effect is really echoing with like an intense reverberation. But what if we want it to also be muffled? What if you're on the other side of this wall and you're not actually in the room?
then to the earth it bowed.
Maybe we want to apply a filter to a muffled effect now. And so we'll add, say, a low-pass filter to the effect when you're outside the room. And what does that give us?
Ere he was borne away.
Now we have the clear
Little need.
audio impression that you're hearing muffled sound that's coming through a wall. You're not quite getting all of it. You're getting the low-pass version of the sound. And if I go over to the door...
A horse and a donkey on the road. Dear me, said the former,
you can see how we transition from the low-pass filter that we get outside the room to the reverb filter of the sound inside the room.
said the donkey. Come, neighbor, I say, won't you lend me a hand with
Yeah,
my
it's very cool.
burden today?
I can show another example of that with maybe some music. So let me show like a musical example. If I grab like a tavern theme here, I'll create a sound. We've got some, I'm going to disable some of these other sounds so there's not any interference. We've got a little like musical players stage here. So let's add a 40-foot radius of this tavern music, and we'll make it unconstrained by walls, and I'll add a muffled effect of a low-pass filter when you're outside the room, and let's go see what that sounds like. I think there's a bug. I told you there'd be bugs. I think there's a bug when you first apply a filter to a sound. It's not quite... like it's creating a duplicate of the sound, which I need to fix that bug. But I told you, prototype, there will be bugs. So here we're outside the hall. Let's make we'll add some satyr actual musicians. So this is what the music sounds like when you're inside the room, what you're hearing right now, because I have these satyrs controlled. But when we're outside the room, here we see the sort of muffled, low-pass version of the sound. And then we'll go to the door, open the door, go inside, and we get the full range of the audio effect. Yeah, really cool, really fun stuff that adds just a lot of like immersion to what you can do with audio sources. And I know I'm sort of blasting you all out on the volume there a little bit. I just needed to turn it up so that my demo could be appreciated. So yeah, there you go. That's some of the new things that are possible with the new audio API in V12. There's a good question about like how does muffled work. So muffled happens when your sound is not constrained by walls, but when the sound is heard through a wall that otherwise blocks sound. So the configuration here to achieve this is that my wall here does restrict sound. It has a normal sound restriction, but my sound source is allowed to pass through walls because it's unconstrained. The sound is treated as muffled when there is an intervening wall between the token that's perceiving it and the source of the sound. So that's when we put the sound into the muffled state. Now, the rules around that may still like evolve a little bit as we do testing and, you know, UX improvement, but that's the initial prototype, and that's the way it works. So yeah, you can set your sound to be unconstrained by walls, and that's why I'm hearing it muffled right now, is because I'm in its area. I'm just on the other side of a wall or a door. Like you notice with the doors, it updates in real time. Like we go from muffled to unmuffled each time we open the door. All right, now I need some help from the team to demo another feature of the improved audio API. A lot of the audio API improvements are really for like back-end performance and stability. Like there's better caching, there's a better just like function signatures for working with sounds. But there are some cool like user-facing features. One of them has to do with door sounds. So the new audio API has a method that can be used to play a certain sound effect at a certain location. And we can use that now or any module can use that to play sounds within the world that happen at a specific spot. So you can imagine like the sound of a character casting a spell or the sound of a trap springing. Modules can script those sounds to play at a particular space in the world that then is affected by all of the walls, all the things around it. You can configure that sound to play in a way that has one of these filters applied, like you can apply reverb to it or muffle it, high pass filter, low pass filter. And so modules can trigger sounds to play for all connected clients at a particular location. And we use that in core now for the sound of doors opening and closing. It used to be in V11 that everyone would hear the sound of a door opening, regardless of wherever you are on the map. If a door opens anywhere, everyone hears that, and that's no longer the case. Now you only hear a door opening if you are nearby to it. So why don't I get Ludovic, why don't you be my helper here? Yeah. These double doors here, I'm going to stand next to them and you can open them and close them for me. Okay, yeah, great. You can close. Perfect. So there's the sound of the door opening and closing when I'm standing right next to it. So I'm going to go over here now, and you can do it again. Same door, same door. Okay, great. Still hear it. Let's move a little further away. Try now. I need to change something about my demo. I forgot. I need to be a player. I need to be a player, not a GM. Let me create a player account. I was like, why is my demo not working? So game masters always hear doors opening and closing. I think we felt it was important for GMs to like not miss that information of like somebody opened a door. GM always hears it. As a player though, let's try and demo this. Ludovic or someone as a GM, can you give the user ownership over Bayro, the bard?
Yeah.
Yeah, so GM here is all, that's why that demo wasn't working. But as a player, I can then, I'll be Bayro here. Okay, let's try again. I'm gonna be here. Now give me the door open and close. Okay, good. I'm gonna keep wandering a little further away. Oh, it's getting quieter. What if I keep going further away? Ooh, it's pretty quiet now. Uh-oh. What if I go on the far side of this door? Are you opening the door? I can't tell. Are you opening and closing the door?
Yeah.
Are you doing it? I must be too far away to hear that now. Perfect. Ignorance is bliss. So there you have it. That's the feature. When you are too far away from a door that is opening or closing or locking or unlocking, you will no longer hear it. And it does also muffle the door sound. I need an example here. Okay, so let's do this door right here. I'm going to go outside so that I'm on the far side of this wall. And if you open and close the door, I hear it, but it's muffled. How cool is that? Perfect.
It's super cool.
Yeah. So there you go. That's some of the cool new stuff that's possible with the V12 audio API, playing with sound and doing cool things with sound, both in the core software and in modules. I didn't show what high pass looks like. I imagine that people might already know that, but that's like the one last thing I can show real quick. We might add additional sound filters before the end. I just added these 3 as a starting point. But you know, it's a good starting point. But high pass is maybe less conventionally useful, but can still be useful. So what that sounds like is, you can imagine like maybe you're playing like a sort of modern or futuristic game, and there's like a speaker system that's like playing something, and it's like it's sort of more indirect sound. If we put a high pass filter on it, you'll hear that this sound is, it almost sounds like it's coming out of like a little speaker. And that can be a really useful effect for certain things. Like if it's like you're in a metro station, or like a future spaceport or something, and there's like something coming over the speakers, or possibly also like outdoor scenes where you might be hearing something at like a great distance. It can also be used to imitate something that you like are at the edges of your perception. So yeah, high pass filter can also be pretty useful. I just figured I'd show that one quickly. All right, that's the audio stuff. What's next? Oh, Ludovic, we didn't talk about darkness lock.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick. So this is part of scene environments, the prior topic that we discussed. It's API only though, right? That's where we landed on this, or did we add it? No, we added it here. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Like forgetting what we did. So sometimes you might have a scene that, like, for whatever reason, shouldn't have a day-night cycle. Like maybe it's you're on the fire plane and there is no day or night. It's just always the same. Or you're in a dark underwater cave and it's always dark and it's never day. And so what you can do here is you can set a certain darkness level, and then you can lock it, and your slider will be disabled. That darkness level will be locked in. You no longer have the like transition to day or transition to night buttons in the sidebar, and any like modules that or any module that like tries to change the darkness level of your scene, that change is just going to be ignored. So like if there's a calendar module or something that's like, oh, the time advances an hour and so the scene needs to be lighter, well, no, it won't be. Not for a scene that is darkness locked. Those changes would be completely ignored, and your visual presentation of the scene will always remain exactly as it is, configured there. You can still, of course, like adjust the environment ambience details, if you want like more shadows or less shadows, or you can still change anything else that you want to. It's just the darkness level no longer changes in this scene. So like, yeah, Underdark, cave, it's always the same darkness level. It doesn't matter if it's day or night, it's locked. So that's what this new darkness lock is for. All right, what's next on my merry list of wonderful things? We did audio API. Grid. Grid is next. Let's talk about Grid v2. It's been a long time since we built the grid system in Foundry. It's one of our oldest features that was well due for an update. Eber, and I don't say this in a bad way, but you sort of tore the grid to the ground and built it back up a little bit. I think it's fair to say. It's a big improvement. Why don't you talk a little bit about like what the goals were, what were some of the problems that we were trying to solve, and what was the work that you did?
Yeah. So I think the hex grid specifically, and the issues we had, the hex grid jump started this change. I'm not sure most users maybe never played in a hex grid. Most are probably playing square grids, but the hex grid wasn't actually, well, it was visually a hex grid, but the underlying math and stuff like that was based on what I call a brick wall grid. I'm not sure if that's it was essentially like rectangles, like in a brick wall.
I can draw a little
maybe.
bit, like basically like what Eber is highlighting is that the hit area for like what constitutes a hexagon was based, each grid space needed to be uniquely identified. And so like one sort of crude way to approximate that is to have this sort of brick wall type representation of like, this is a hex, this is a hex, this is a hex, this is a hex. But this was not faithful to the reality of like which hex are you in at a particular time, because the bottom parts of the hex in this case were incorrectly, truncated.
Yeah, so if you ever use the measuring tool in a hex grid, you probably notice that when you the end point of the ruler wasn't necessarily in the grid your cursor was in. So if you were in the lower triangle in this kind of hex grid, it would either choose the one below to the left or the one to the right. And
you can look now and see, I'll zoom way in and you can see that as I move my mouse cursor around, it is pixel perfect in terms of like which hex is identified as your destination hex for any cursor position. That was one of the big things. I mean, that was sort of almost like the main reason we embarked on this refactor, was to improve hex grids, but we got a bunch of great features out as a result as well. Why don't you talk a little bit about snapping, and then we can talk about styling, perhaps?
Yeah. Anyone that used the snapping API we had before, there was basically just an interval parameter that you could choose to control the snapping behavior. Now we have multiple, a great number of possible snapping behaviors, and even in the grid resolution option. So, I hope no one misses a particular snapping mode. I think we have more than we'll ever need.
There are a lot, yeah.
So, and specifically in HexGrid, that improves the snapping behavior. We have snapping modes that weren't possible before. What you already saw, now we show when you drag something, we show the snapped position.
Unless you're holding shift, which allows you to
then-
place completely unsnapped. You can place something wherever you want if you're holding the shift modifier, but if you're not holding shift, then your preview of your dropped token location is already snapped, so you know exactly where it's going to go.
Yeah, especially for placing walls, I think that should speed up the placement of walls significantly, because previously you had to guess where the endpoint would snap to, and sometimes maybe that wasn't the location you intended, and so you would have to go back and change that again. So now you see
what you will get. Yeah, there's a little bit of jitter when you're dragging the wall as a result of that, but that is a good jitter, because what it means is that the endpoint that is displayed to you is exactly where the wall endpoint will end up when you release the mouse. And of course you can, with walls, also hold shift and you can place unsnapped wherever it's completely smooth, but snapping by default gives you really like pixel precision and predictability around like exactly where is this wall going to be snapped to when I release the mouse button.
Yeah, and in general the snapping behavior on HexGrid improved. So I think it wasn't possible before to place wall segments parallel to the grid lines. So if you wanted to place walls along the grid, but a little bit inset or into a hex or offset, these kind of things weren't possible. So you should be able to draw a slightly smaller hex easily. Something like that wasn't possible before, I think. And at the same time, you can still place walls that snap to the axis aligned. To the Z and X and Y axis. So, wall placement should be improved on HexGrids. Mm-hmm. For square grids, nothing much changed, right? It's the square grid is pretty simple, so it uses the usual subdivision. But most of the grid improvements are things that are mostly hex specific. One thing we can show off for square grids specifically are the new or the options we have now for measuring grid diagonals.
Let's come to that in a minute. Let's while we're still on this hex scene, let's talk about like visually representing the grid, because that's also something that has changed.
Yeah, previously we have drawn the grid with pixie graphics, and now we use a shader-based approach. The grid, the drawing with the pixie graphics had some downsides. I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but the opacity of the grid was different than in square grids. Mm-hmm. The reason for that was that we drew like the outlines of each hexagon, and of course the neighboring grid lines overlap, and so it
was double drawn.
Yeah, double the opacity of each line segment. And
so previously what we had and what we still have is that you can configure the opacity, but you no longer have like either double drawn lines or like the intersection points of lines where there was like an intersection before. You can change the color. That also, of course, did exist before and does exist now. But it's not just color and opacity that you can configure, because there's now some very exciting new options. Let's start with style. So
Or
in
maybe
addition to
thickness
solid
first,
lines,
so we see the effect better.
yeah,
the
let's
thickness.
increase the,
Yeah.
we'll do thicker. So you get both thickness of the grid as well as style of the grid. So here's like a thicker dashed grid that looks, it looks very nice when you're zoomed in. It's a nice looking effect. Dotted lines with circular dots. Square points, this is kind of a cool way of representing it that only displays the vertices of the grid. And of course, for a hex, it's the hex points. On a square grid, it would be the 4 corner points of the square, where it only shows those points. And that can work well if you have like a even larger grid thickness, perhaps. Lots of ways to represent the grid, diamond points as well, and round points. All super cool. I think one of my favorite things that you accomplish with the shader is in the dashed lines, like the little triangles at the intersections. That's really clever.
Yeah.
Because that could easily have not looked great, but the way that
This gave me a headache.
yeah, well, it was a
domestic
worthy headache, because the result of it is really nice. Having the cleanness of the look, it really shows up really great. That's it's one of my favorite features. We'll show some of these grid options on I see a good question in chat, show it on a real, like a map with a background. We'll do that in just a second. I'm going to switch this to square grid. You wanted to talk a little bit about and that also allows just to show what these different styles look like for square grid. So you've got your solid lines, dashed, dotted, square points, diamond points, round points, however you want to represent your square grid. You wanted to talk a little bit about the diagonals?
Yeah. In pre V12, the core measuring rule for diagonals was equidistant. So moving a diagonal step costs the same amount of movement, or was the same amount of distance as a step to the side or up. And now we have the option in the settings to choose any kind of measuring rule. So like Pathfinder, and Pathfinder has an alternating rule, I think, by default, and the optional 5e rule for measuring good diagonals is also the alternating rule. And previously systems had to patch this somehow in to our grid class, and now we support all of these options. We have equidistance.
I'll just show each of them one at a time. So equidistant is what we were just showing, where like every diagonal is 5, no matter how many you go. And then we can change to exact, square root of 2. I'll have to reload each time in between. We should see if that's required. Maybe we can relax that setting to like apply in real time.
Yeah.
It might be possible. So now on a square grid, your diagonal's 7.07 feet, and you get kind of a sort of true Euclidean measurement. So that's another option. There was a question in chat about like, didn't this exist before? It did exist before, but it sort of required every game system to implement this themselves. So this now makes it a core software thing that any game system can use, and game systems can also define like what the default is as part of their system manifest. So in addition to exact, we have approximate, which is I'll have to reload each time. A little bit of demo friction, but it's still worth showing. So approximate is 7.5 feet, 15 feet. Basically, it just approximates with 1.5, so it's a little bit less mathy. If you don't like, 7.07, then that the approximate setting is for you. And Edward, did we also do, or not yet, something that relates this to measured templates? Or I can't remember if we did that yet or if we were just talking about it.
We were just talking about it, yeah.
Okay.
Now the template shapes are unaffected by this setting.
I'm not going to show rectilinear. It's kind of there for completeness, but it is perhaps a little bit
It's basically Manhattan
uncommon.
distance. Yeah,
maximum distance. Alternating 1-to-1 is sort of the more common rule that many systems use. And so that would be something that, say, D&D and Pathfinder might use, where your first one's 5 and then 10, 15, 20, 30. It also works across multiple segments. So like, if you're doing like a piecewise measurement, it does track the diagonals across the whole measured path, and it accumulates those diagonal movements as part of the total measurement distance. And that's true for all of these measuring modes.
Illegal is my favorite.
Illegal. Yeah, let's show that one. That's probably one that actually is worth understanding what that does. I won't show 2-1-2 because it's just the opposite of 1-to-1. Illegal is one that basically makes diagonal movement impossible. There could be some game systems that only want to do sort of north, south, east, west moves, in which case you can see in your ruler, like if you want to move diagonally, it forces you to follow a path of non-diagonal moves. And so like if I want to move one square diagonally, I have to go either up and across or across and up. And, it's not one that many systems would use, but there may be some games that need that as a rule set. So it's there. Very nicely done, Eber. Great stuff with the grid refactor. Great stuff all around. Really well done.
There was a question about hex coordinates, and that did actually get a lot of attention as well. Yeah. But it's a bit technical. I don't know if we want to cover that, but...
Well, I think probably what we could say is just that we revamped and improved upon the consistency of the API contracts for any methods that exchange coordinates. So particularly for hex grids, you have 3 coordinate systems that can be used. You have points, pixels. You've got offsets, which is kind of row column expressed as IJ pair. And then you've got cubic coordinates. QRS are the variable names that are used there, and it's a tuple of QRS coordinates that express the cubic coordinate system, which is especially useful for many hex manipulation methods. So understanding like when, where you move from a particular hex, there's 3 axes of movement that you can have from any particular origin hex, and QRS are the 3 axes in a cubic coordinate system. So all 3 of those coordinate systems are supported by our revamped Grid v2 API, although some methods specifically transact, say, cube coordinates because they're designed to. So the API that we provide is really powerful and really useful for doing anything related to a grid, whether it's square, gridless, or hex. We haven't really talked about gridless. It works much as you would expect, just there is no grid and there's no snapping. Everything just goes exactly where you put it. Except for wall endpoints, we do still snap wall endpoints to a microgrid to help you place them accurately in gridless. But
this came up twice now. We have an A-star for hex grids somewhere. In V11,
there's an
on
A-star.
hex grid.
There's an A-star pathfinding algorithm in the code base. Although I think that I do expect it maybe will change for V12. I've been talking with Eber about maybe thinking about a new framework for pathfinding that would work for square grid as well. Like I just implemented A-star for hex specifically because I had a need for it, but maybe it's not a super standardized API yet, and so I see a question from chat. How do you have currently playing at the bottom of the music tab? There's a little toggle arrow where you can either have it at the top or at the bottom, depending on what your UI preference is. But yeah, we may do more with pathfinding either in prototype 2 or later in the V12 development phase. Awesome. So yeah, really, really fantastic stuff with Grid V2. And I think one of the things that maybe you didn't sell enough, Eber, is the performance benefit of the shader. I think it's a little hard to quantify, but the geometry of what the shader is rendering is now vastly simpler because it's just a quad, right? And at least I assume it's just a quad, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
And before, you're rendering thousands for a large scene at a small grid size. You're rendering thousands of graphics, individual lines, and so you have, thousands of. I mean, those are geometrically simple, but you still have thousands of them that you have to render. And so now the shader is doing just a single draw call to render the whole grid there for whatever's on your scene, on your screen at a given moment. Hopefully that's an accurate way to speak about
the
that.
old Pixie graphics approach, we couldn't have even offered like a grid thickness, because even on square grids, if the thickness would be larger than on pixel, you would notice that in the section points the opacity is different. So the shade approach has many benefits performance wise, and things that are possible to do now. And I think we didn't mention it, but modules can add their own grid styles that will be selectable in the grid configuration. So if anyone can think of more grid styles or other fancy effects on the grid, that's possible now.
Yeah. A couple questions about gridless. I think what Nocturnal is getting at is that, an alternate UI for ruler measurement that shows a preview of the token where it's going to end up is helpful. I can agree with that, and I think that there's a good module out there that many of you probably already use. There's reasons why we didn't make that like the default behavior of Foundry, but I think it is something that is a UX that makes a lot of sense in a lot of situations. And so I wouldn't be surprised now that we've done this grid refactor, that may be something that we look at in terms of continued improvement for the like ruler measurement UX. I'm not going to promise anything, but that is something that we've talked about internally and that I've been thinking about a bit as well. All right, let's move on. Grid V2 in the bag, really good stuff. Couple of little small features. Honestly, we have a ton of little small features in the backlog. I'm not going to comment on most of them. Most of them are related to like one of our epics in some way or another. But we've got a token lock, which is an interesting API paradigm that's added now. So if I go back to a scene, I mean, I could do it on the scene I was just in. Oh, and people wanted to sorry, I'm being a little bit scattered here, but people wanted to see, say, like, what does a dashed grid look like on like a real map. Like here's an example. Obviously, like, of course you can customize the color and, you know, the tone of the grid to have good like contrast for your scene, however you want it to look. But yeah, it's a nice options. Token lock. What token lock can do is it can... Oh, Ludovic is reminding me of something important. Yeah, let's do that. Thank you, Ludovic. Good reminder. Kim did something cool. I need to... let's see here. I need to undock this just for a second. And I'm gonna launch this thing up. Kim, I didn't set up a user account for you here, but I'll just pull it up. I don't think there's much to do other than show it.
Yeah.
Kim, tell people what they're looking at here.
Well, you may be familiar with a thing we do, which is Free Project Friday, where the last Friday of every month we just kind of work on something that's related to Foundry, but that we're not chained to the priorities and the backlog. And so when Eber did the work on grid shaders, that unlocked a lot of possibilities. It's a shader now, which means you can do shader effects. They're not limited really at all to what you can do with the grid. And so this was my first shader that Ludovic helped me with. I don't do really graphics programming, so we worked together to make my first ever shader, to use the new grid shader, just to do something interesting. And this was the result.
Yeah, super cool. There's so many possibilities that exist now that the grid can be a shader. And I want to be clear to everyone that we're just sort of brainstorming possibilities here rather than talking about V12 features. But the doors of possibilities that are opened by this are really extreme. So like you could have a grid where, for example, there's no grid at all on your scene, but when you select a token, there's like a little grid displayed locally just around the token that you have controlled. Or like you could render the grid so that it only shows the grid for spaces that are within a certain legal movement distance. Or you could have like effects that, like, when you put a fireball template down, it actually like draws the grid lines on fire for where that fireball template is. Like you can do really like anything that you can do in a graphical shader now, you can do for Foundry's grids. And so, these are not things that just happen, like they have to be made, but they're things that module developers could make or that we could make. So the technical foundation for that is really exciting.
Yeah, I think we some other ideas we came up with, like when you drop a token, it kind of ripples the grid out a little bit from where you drop it.
You could use the grid to communicate the illumination level of the scene. Like you could draw areas of bright light in a certain grid color, and you could draw areas of dim light in a certain grid color, and you could draw areas of darkness in a certain grid color, and the grid could communicate the lighting level.
Well, thanks to Eber's work on the shaders, which worked really well. I learned later that I did it wrong. I used the API wrong, but it's fine. It's Free Project Friday.
But it's a demo. Like you did this in a day, less than a day, and so it's a good example of like what can be done. Very cool. All right, I'm going to go back to yeah, thank you, Ludovic, for reminding me to demo that. All right, let's see, back to where we were. Token lock. So token lock is an API feature that you can use to prevent a token from moving, or prevent potentially all tokens from moving. So if it's sort of a little bit like game paused, but it's more for individual tokens. So suppose like a token gets stunned or paralyzed, you can lock that token in place so that that single specific token cannot move. And so it's an API concept, but it's one that modules or systems or we can use to have a specific token that gets frozen and unmovable, while others are movable. So unlike pause, where it's like nothing can move, this allows individual, single tokens to be frozen into place in a toggleable API call. That's a little thing that I wanted to mention because it might spark some ideas for module or system developers out there who might want to think about like how they would use the token lock. It can also be useful like as we add like event triggers and scene regions and stuff. Like suppose you want to have a triggered behavior where like you enter the room and one by one like doors open and cowled mysterious figures like stride into the room to meet you. Like say you want to have almost like a cutscene of sorts, like you could script that cutscene and maybe you want to like lock your player tokens while that cutscene's playing so that your players aren't just like wandering off while the like cutscene is playing. You can use the lock that way to just like stop people from doing something while like something plays out, or you could use it for a mechanical reason. Lots of things that you could do with a token lock. So it's generally, I think, a nice idea to have. Another little thing that's like pretty cool, active effect statuses, and this is just to show that we're doing a little bit more with like custom HTML elements now that are designed to help make form rendering better. This is something that's going to happen a lot more with application v2, but like the active effect configuration now has a status conditions multi-select. So for example, I can say I have like an invisibility effect from a spell, like this, have the invisibility spell. I can add the invisible status condition to the active effect, but it's a multi-select, so you could also be, blind and burning and poisoned all at the same time. So you can add any of these sort of status tags that are supported by the system to an active effect that imparts those status tags on the actor. And I'll just do back to just invisible for now, but this multi-select is a custom HTML element, so that's like an interesting thing to know for the module devs, that like this multi-select UX is just like a single HTML tag that's really easy to use, just like a single select, because multi-select is usually like not a great UX. And so if an active effect, for example, has the invisibility status, then like when that active effect gets turned on, you actually gain that status and you become invisible and you become, undetected by the centaur next to you that can't see the invisible creature. So you can have more automation of effects because those statuses then impart automated behaviors in the game system or in a module. And so toggling those effects on or off can actually like impose those conditions and those changes. So that's sort of like just a nice like little thing, but that starts to knit things together a little bit better. I think that's about the end of my list. I have some extra bonus topics that are like a little bit more technical. Let's touch on some of those for a moment. Dependency changes, and this may get a little bit boring for people, but this is just like for the devs in the audience. Dependency changes. Foundry now requires node 18 plus. The V12 Electron version will have that baked in, but if you're running as a node server and you're older than 18, you'll need to get up to node 18 to run V12. There's also a number of dependency changes that might be relevant to your module that you can look at in a GitHub issue that has them all documented. Another thing that we're doing is we're shifting a lot of the, well, I wouldn't say a lot, we're shifting client-side code bit by bit to ES modules instead of just a monolithic JS file. And shifting client-side code to a client-side ES module is having a bunch of benefits for code organization, for type hinting, for IDE behavior, for generation of documentation, for folks who are on the TypeScript side of the fence. It's a much better starting point for generating type declaration files, which is something that we're looking into. If we can provide the TypeScript community with a better starting point for our API. Yeah, so that move towards client-side ES modules is a really big and important change that we're gradually making. It's not going to be a lift and shift immediately, but over time we'll move more and more there. There's a bunch of V10 deprecations that are important to take note of. These were things that were like removed in V10, and now they're really they were like put under a deprecation period warning in V10, and now they are like fully removed. And so I think this Git issue 10164 that you can find in our V12 backlog, it'll be prominently in our patch notes and other discussion about V12. But there's a lot of things that was changed in V10, but it's continued to work with warnings until now, and now it needs to be really changed. So there's an exhaustive list of what those things are that can help you follow along. Other little technical notes, some changes to package manifests. Compendium names now are slightly more strictly validated. There were some illegal characters that were allowed in compendium identifiers that now are not. There are some other package manifest changes for systems that can now declare default grid behaviors for their system, like what grid style, what type of grid. Like if your system always uses hex grids, and you can, in the system manifest, you can declare like what the default grid should be for anyone playing in this system. Yeah, those are, I guess, just some like little technical notes. We're working on application V2. I know many of you are hungry for more detail there. That's going to be slowly coming together. It's going to be more of a fully fledged showcase in prototype 2, but there will be a bare bones implementation of it in prototype 1 that can let you start getting a sense of what it's about, but it won't be done yet. And then also DICE v3 is the other kind of core infrastructure change that we don't have ready to share today, but that will be a prototype 2 thing. I encourage folks not to worry too much about that. We're committed that our DICE v3 change will not, will not change the way you make dice rolls. So, it's not gonna. We don't expect any breaking changes as a result of DICE v3. It's more like under the hood. But it will be something that is important for us to do.
Should fix some expressions
yeah.
that just throw errors at the moment, but are sort of valid syntax.
Yeah. So what Mute Foxy says is right. Like prototype 1 is sort of like everything we've shown here and more besides, and then prototype 2 will have a big focus on scene regions, those like effect zones, application v2 and DICE v3. Like those are sort of the three main things, plus possibly some other cool bonus features that we managed to squeeze in. Anyone else want to spotlight anything, discuss anything?
Yeah. Just to add, it will be interesting to know for developers and system developers. We have also now the global light, which is now its own data model into the scene. So it is not anymore into the config option. So you have data model and you could update the global light directly with the send update. And the second thing is the possibility to pad a sprite now. It could be useful for developer using shaders. And if you have a custom shaders and you need to add padding, for example, because your effects need some extra space, it is handled automatically by your framework with the padding.
Yeah, great points to add. The UI requirements, like the UI benefit of global light, is something that we'll probably be working on. I think I'm sure we'll update the UI of the scene configuration at some point to make it easier to customize that global light source in scenes that have one. That's something that we'll definitely want to be doing as we update the UI and UX of the environment tab as well. Let's see, Kim, how about you? What are you most excited about for V12 that maybe we haven't touched on quite as much yet? Anything that you're especially looking forward to or thinking about?
V12, I think probably application V2 and some of the new styling. We're moving some of that. Some of the you've got a preview of the V2 styles in the setup screen.
Yeah.
And we'll be bringing some of that into the game space. I think that for me, for sure.
Awesome.
What about you, Eber? Anything else that you're
I have
particularly
some
excited about?
really minor thing I want to highlight. Something I always notice when I switch back to a V11 instance. We made some small tweaks to the folders and directory, like the indentation. We increased indentation a little bit, and now the borders are where they're supposed to be. And yeah,
let me show that a little bit. Yeah, so
I've seen complaints about this, and now it's really nice, and it feels great. And if you switch back to V11,
you miss it.
You notice. Yeah, you miss it.
Miss
but it's a minor thing, but yeah.
Well, especially when you have like levels of nesting, it really makes it more visually clear, like what element, like what object belongs to what subfolder. Yeah, it's a really nice little thing. Awesome. Are we done? I don't know. I can show. Let's see. I can show one thing that's a cool little preview that gives a taste of what's possible with V12 and PCO V2 and some things that can be done there. Let me see. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, we're going to do some Q&A as well, but I'm just going to show something a little cool to kind of like give folks some ideas about some things that they can think about doing or trying or experimenting with. Here's I'm going to switch to a different view here. Hopefully that's coming through all right now. Yeah, take this one down. So here's a scene that we're working on that's kind of a cool, like, sort of dockside hideout. There's a couple of things that you may notice about this scene that's quite nice. Of course, like the lovely water effect. This is like really cool. Like this is not a video tile. Like this is not a video that we're using. This is all just sprites and shaders, and so it's a PCO. Like we talked about primary canvas object. Like we just put the water in a layer in the scene, and then we apply a shader to it to do some like beautiful sort of water effect. There's all kinds of things you can do like that. Of course, like all of these little like buildings, you know, can like tuck away their roofs, and you know, all of these can be rendered as PCOs, like as primary canvas objects. You can have control over all of that, and like it's a really nice way to like have a much better for performance alternative for like video scenes, like animated scenes, that it's much more lightweight than a video file. And there's things that you can do in this framework that are closer to sort of, you know, game design ideas, and less about like just making a certain like single you know, single video. Like for example, like if we go up to the warehouse here, like I can open the doors. Oh, look at that. That's very nice and like immersive. You know, we can have like the sort of integration of like the visual and audio and sort of gameplay element. Oh, if I like discover a hidden like secret passage back here. Oh, that's like so nice. The way that that's done is by making those individual elements a PCO. It's a primary canvas object. It's part of the scene. We just like make the map. We make the map in a way that defines these in a way that lets you do those sorts of things. And it's not hard to take a PCO and animate it so that you're like exploring around the world and having this really sort of nice immersive experience at your table. So that's a little teaser of like some things to come that you know, that we're doing, like really nice ideas. There's a lot more where this came from. We're doing a lot of fun things, but like the reason we're building a lot of these tools is so that creators, artists, adventure makers, ourselves can then use this platform to make, you know, gameplay experiences that you know, go beyond what has been done previously in a virtual tabletop. And, that's something that we're really excited about. Cool. Well, there's a little teaser for you all of ways to take advantage of the PCO framework. Let's do Q&A. That's a good place to segue into audience Q&A. If anyone, we've been sitting here for a while. If anyone needs to take a break, feel free to go ahead and go. I think I would normally put us on like an intermission and I'd go take a break, but since there's 4 of us, I figured that like at least someone can keep the question chain flowing while, you know, if you need to duck away, feel free and do that. But yeah, let's take some questions from chat. Anyone who wants to ask questions, drop your question in chat, give it a good like capital question prefix, and we'll answer as many of those as we can. Mute Foxy asks, can you change the distance between dashes in the dashed grid or the dash length? Theoretically, you could. Those would be shader options. They're not exposed to the UI right now, but we might be able to do something either as like a different grid style, like we could do like a staggered dash or like a dot dash style or something. It would have to be a variation of the shader, though. Either different uniforms or a different shader. Twenty DeGuerra asks if it's a new calendar I've got there. A new calendar. New calendar. I don't have a calendar. Maybe there's a reference I don't. Oh, in the no, okay, I know. Yeah, in Foundry. Yeah, that was a little calendar integration, but yeah, it's not it's for a side project. It's like a module. Caled asks, are we getting an API or something to add new controls to prose mirror editors globally? Let's come to that question, Caled, once Kim gets back. I think that would be a good one. Kim may have some ideas there. Dregory Term asks, is it or will it be possible to apply audio filters to playlists, like combat music that gets distorted? Great question. Under the hood, audio playlists also play using the same new sound API that I demoed today. So theoretically, yes, it will be possible to apply filters to playlist tracks. I haven't implemented that yet, and I haven't implemented either like an API or a UI for it, but now that this exists, what I showed earlier, it's a relatively trivial addition to add the ability for playlist sounds to also be filtered, and that's something that I hope to get to in V12. Kim, there was a good question that you might have a perspective on. Any new APIs regarding controls of prose mirror editors? Specifically, are we getting an API or something to add new controls to prose mirror editors globally?
You can already do that. There's a hook whenever a prose mirror editor is created, and you can like swap out the menu plugin for your own. You can subclass it and add whatever controls you want, but I guess maybe a way that involves not subclassing the menu and swapping out the plugin. There's nothing planned, but if you want to write up an issue sort of detailing the things you need, it's probably not hard to add. Like, it's just a little structure within the menu which determines what controls appear, so we could
we can't
do that.
We can't guarantee that we'll get to absolutely everything, but I do think we have already planned in prototype 2 to look at some prose mirror improvements. That may get shifted to the development phase, but like improvements to prose mirror is definitely something that's like thematically on brand with what we're looking to do in prototype 2. Question from Nocturnal, is Dice Dedupe likely to make a reappearance with Dice V3? I'm not sure I know what you mean by that. Kim, do you know what might be meant by Dice Dedupe?
Is it something when we previously have a way of simplifying terms that we then got rid of?
Maybe there was a role simplification. I know we kind of moved some of that to the 5e system specifically, but we might have that might have been at the expense of a core thing. It could be cool, and if Peggy ends up working out, we might be able to use the grammar to like identify groupable, like identify simplification rules or something.
Yeah, what you'll get out of Peggy is you'll get a parse tree.
Yeah.
And then that gets converted into an abstract syntax tree, and then that will be converted further into the sort of flat array that you're used to in the normal API. At any point, like the parse tree, the abstract syntax tree, or the flat array, it might be a bit easier to remove redundant terms from the abstract syntax tree, so you might be able to just like do that really easily. I'll have to check.
Yeah, it's something that we might be able to look into. I mean, I understand the desire to be able to simplify terms. It is somewhat up to maybe, like, as long as those terms are unmodified, we might be able to make that assumption in core, but it is sort of a system level thing as soon as modifiers come into the picture. Like, if there's like a 1d8, plus some modifier, might not be a core modifier, like we lose the ability to know whether that term can be simplified with an adjacent 1d8 or not.
It might be important. It might have options or flavor and stuff attached to it that you can't just delete.
Question from Ikagia batata. I tried. When placing templates, lights, etc., can you select the height you want to place at? Not currently, but it's an interesting idea for a UX that like we might be able to like have some modified placement that like instead of changing the radius, like you're dragging up or down elevation. Currently, you have to place first, and then set a height of the light source as a follow-up step. Question from Inaluki: will App v2 still use handlebars? That's something that you'll probably be able to see an example of in Prototype 1 if I make it in time. I'm going to talk for a second about code that hasn't been written yet, and so it is like the most subject to change, even more subject to change than other things we've shown today, but the design of App v2 is that the App v2 class governs the overall sort of outer architecture of the application, and the inner rendering is composed in using a different rendering backend. So our goal is to try and make it to where, folks who love Vue, or folks who love React, or folks who love handlebars, or folks who just like writing HTML template literals, or, whatever other cool, like, new edge, HTML rendering framework you like, you should be able to define a rendering backend for that framework and plug it into an App v2 app. So you could have like, this is an App v2 app that uses handlebars. This is an App v2 app that uses Vue. This is an App v2 app that uses React. And basically, like, the rendering backend is responsible for the inner HTML, and the application v2 instance is responsible for the outer sort of containerization of that, and like the management of how the app interacts with Foundry as like a larger framework. Now, there's going to be some work needed to prove that concept out. So the answer to your question is sort of like yes, but also no. Yes, application v2 will still use handlebars, because I think we will provide in core a handlebars backend that is App v2 compatible, and that handlebars backend will be a working example that others can follow, that if you want to implement a Vue backend or something like that, you should be able to. But getting the interface right, like getting the design of that backend right so that it's suitably flexible for like the differences between how Vue thinks about the world and how handlebars thinks about the world and how React thinks about the world, that's a little bit tricky, but that's hopefully what we will get feedback from our dev community on during the prototype phase. Hopefully that's a good enough answer. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of chat. Sorry if I'm skipping over anyone's questions. I just want to, stay a little bit more current. Let's see. Question: directional sounds and lights from 20 Digera. Already supported to a certain extent, because you can customize an emission angle of your light or your sound, and so you can have a directional light already. Now you may be thinking of something else. Obviously, like, a cone is not always the shape that you want for your light, and so one of the things that we're hoping to do is to, at some point, add support for you to attach an arbitrary geometry to a light source. Like, you can draw your own polygon and say, like, this light or this sound has this arbitrary region of its effect. But I don't want to promise that that will be a V12 thing. It's just something that we hope to do. Question from T Mins, not to be confused with T Moon. Do ambient sounds muffle more with each wall between the token and the sound? No, not in the current implementation, but that's a nice idea, and it's something that I have thought about. That, Eber, you had some ideas about this as well, in terms of, like, would the wall have, I think it was you? Maybe would the wall have like a certain permeability or a certain, like, do we think about sound as just like an impulse and then that impulse gets dampened by sequential collisions? Was it you that was saying something like that?
Maybe, could be. I don't remember, but yeah, we don't have a lot of information about the wall, right? Thickness, material, and stuff like that. So
if a module wanted to go
module-
all out on this, you know, the module could extend walls to track things like, you know, a sort of sound dampening factor or something. Like how you choose to express that data, probably there's a very technical way to, I'm not an expert about this, but there's probably a good way to track, like for a certain wall, like how much would it dampen sound, and then you could conceivably consider like all collisions along the path between the origin, and you could even have support for sort of like bouncing. Like you could have an algorithm where, you know, you cast a ray out from the origin until you hit something, and then you cast another ray and you kind of support the sound bouncing in like an L shape. It would all be down to like writing a clever enough algorithm that's good for performance. These aren't things that I expect us to try and do, but the API framework should conceivably allow for that when you want to identify like how is this wall muffled. There's opportunities out there for modules to do some really crazy things, as always.
I will just add that we should be able to pass the wave to a shader.
Yeah, so this is a nice thing that actually can be done. Yeah, we have in the audio pipeline, you can attach an analyzer node to a sound, add it to its pipeline, and by adding that analyzer node, you get a real-time stream of information about the decibels of the sound, and you could use those changes from the analyzer node to integrate like sound and visual, you know, in synchronization. That's something that could make for some very cool like weather effects or something, or you know, magical effects where the pulse, like the appearance of the shader, is linked to the timing of the sound effect. But yeah, again, not things that we necessarily are doing, but things that are now possible because of these API improvements. Question from Le Ratier Bretonien.
Le ratier bretonien.
I tried, Ludovic. I tried. Any improvements planned around video audio chat? We acknowledge that there's room for improvement there. So when I say no, I don't mean to say no insofar as like we don't think it can be improved, but it isn't something that is currently a V12 focus. We're doing a lot, but we can't. Sadly, we cannot do everything.
In the meantime, web technologies are improving, and hopefully we can take advantage of those.
Yeah. Great question from Mooman. Are the PCO improvements a possible substitute for parallaxia? Yes, definitely. So we've actually done some work with this where we can animate the offset of a PCO texture, and you can like infinitely scroll a repeating texture using the PCO framework. We've done that, and so we can say definitively that it works. So yeah, good question, and that is definitely possible. There's not a like in UI configuration to configure a tile to do that, but the underlying primary sprite mesh API can easily allow this to happen. So, you know, it might require a module to build that interface on top of it, but yes. Question from Ikeo Majesty, will the scene region react to clicks or only tokens? I don't know yet. We're still at a phase of like, how do we define the regions? And then the next phase will really be like, what do the regions do? Let's see here. Some FA tokens are diagonally oriented. Will it be possible to set a rotation offset as well? Good question. We haven't added that to our data model, but it is true that some token creators will follow a different convention, like, you know, southwest facing tokens instead of south facing tokens. Eber, what do you think?
We have a rotation, our texture data model, that we do not use at the moment. So yeah, we could consider using it for that, like, yeah, for the rotation offset. So maybe not in the token configuration necessarily, but it could be an option.
Yeah, there's possibilities there.
Yeah,
it is something that is a real thing, that, you know, some token creators, artists, do draw their tokens, you know, southwest or southeast facing, and yeah, I agree, that would be nice to be able to adjust that. All right, I'm going to scroll back to current, and then I'll look up from there. Nocturnal was asking about redundant operator terms. Yeah, that probably is something that the syntax tree, like, we could identify sibling operator terms that can be safely eliminated. So like a plus next to a plus. Yeah, that probably could be done.
I will have to check that the grammar doesn't just throw up on operators that are next to each other.
Redundant, yeah, or adjacent,
Yeah.
even.
I think if they have a space between them, it'll be okay. I need to check, so that's good to raise.
Yeah, and we'll also have to consider what the current v11 behavior there is, in terms of, like, if you have a, you know, 4++3 with no space between the pluses, what does v11 do? And do we then need to, you know, like, do we need to pre-process the expression with a regular expression to, like, insert spaces so that the grammar tolerates it, or something? Like, do you know, there could be solutions. You know, we want dice expressions that work in v11 to still work in v12, but we just want to improve the engine. So it's the kind of thing we'll have to, those are good edge cases for us to think about.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. Question from Kazed Jake. Do you ever take time to reflect on the fact that you all made a product which allows people from across the globe to connect and establish friendships, relationships which might never have been possible without your platform? Thank you, Jake, for teeing us up for that easy win with that question. I always appreciate a slow pitch. Yeah, thank you. I very occasionally, I mean, I don't know I'd be curious what the rest of the team, their answers to this are. I occasionally reflect on it, but I feel like I'm so busy with wanting to do the next thing that I just maybe don't pause for too long. But yeah, I mean, it is very gratifying for sure.
Yeah, I reflect on a lot of things. Very grateful for.
Question from Zombie Fleischer. Will the playlist music controls also be overhauled, expanded? It would be nice to have more control over music or sound pieces besides play and pause, like a seek bar or skip track stuff. Maybe. Honestly, like, the UI is hard. I think UI is difficult here. It's also worth noting that, like, seeking, it's technically complicated because our API has two different types of source nodes that it supports. It's got media element source nodes that are used for long duration streaming audio, and it's got audio buffer source nodes that's used for short duration audio, where the entire waveform is buffered in memory. the way that seeking happens is different for both of those. And so it's like we would need to sort of have a UI, an API layer that sort of abstracts that away. You can't seek a buffer node. You can just stop playing it and start playing it at a different, like start playing it again at a different location. You can seek on a media element stream node. But yeah, you know, it's seeking, it would be nice. It's also a limited amount of real estate to work with. So like we have 300 pixels of the sidebar. We have a volume slider already. We've got a title of the track. We've got some other controls. If we add a seek bar, you know, there's probably enough space to do it, but it is kind of expanding the footprint of the UI, especially when you have multiple tracks playing. Anyways, I'm not trying to make excuses or anything. it is a little bit, it's maybe not as simple as you imagine it to be, perhaps, as to like how to make those sorts of improvements. All right, let's see. Did you plan in the future fade in, fade out when music changed? That actually is already supported, Zarkan Chegg. What you can do is either at the playlist level overall, you can define a crossfade duration, or you can override that fade duration on an individual track level, and it will fade in and out as those tracks end and begin. Question from Celestian GC, will V12 update the search mechanics for journals? I love the new style, but everything is rather disappointing when you try to find anything. Yeah, so currently what we have, and this is not an advertisement, but an acknowledgement, you know, what we have currently is a filter, not really a search. So if I look for the word estate, at the top of the sidebar, I'm finding journal entries that have estate in the title. And then if I'm searching inside a journal entry, I'm identifying, you know, I'm identifying pages that have hazard in the title. But there's a little house divided bug that estate in ruin needs to use the house divided sheet, and it doesn't. Note to the team for next time we do an AHD update. But yeah, when I search for hazard in the journal, like I'm finding just the page that has hazard in the title, not a page that has hazard in its content. So, you know, I think my take on your question is not like, are we improving search, but more like, are we adding search? Because what we have now isn't really search. I would describe what we have now as filtering in a sort of limited capacity. And then the question is, would we be adding search, where presumably that search would be desired to look inside the content of the page as well? You know, maybe have a UI for displaying search results that provides you with context around the located result, like some words before, some words after, you know, that kind of experience. And that would be nice to do, but I don't think it's something we currently have scoped. Kim, is that something that you've thought about? I feel like I may be recalling that this was something you were talking about, or my memory might be failing me.
It wasn't me. It's definitely come up
Yeah.
within the team and in these dev streams before, just general, or not even dev streams, and like sort of the feedback channels on Discord. Yeah, so full text search.
Yeah.
If it's not in a compendium, it's not too difficult. I don't know how slow it would be. It might be slow.
Question from Pickers101. What is the feature each of you are most looking forward to creating or working on? Not necessarily the feature you're most looking forward to using, but like, I guess maybe this is about the creative, the technical challenge, or the creative process, or like, a compelling problem space. Eber, any thoughts from you? It could be something you've already done or something that you're excited for, the challenge.
Yeah, definitely want to make the grid more powerful, improved pathfinding and stuff like that. So the grid API is really solid and really powerful. Yeah, and of course for project 2 we planned improved detection modes and I'm the author of the Vision 5e module for anyone that's using it. So, and the features that I have there, they're hacked in really in a really bad way, and I hope that we can improve the detection mode in Vision API and get some of these features into core, and so every system can enjoy the benefits. And it's always nice to have all these different vision modes, detection modes, and so that your players that have a certain vision mode or sense can see more than other players, and that's always nice.
Good answer. Kim, how about you? What's the technical challenge you're most looking forward to?
Probably dice. I'm just trying to find. I've been doing a lot of V11 work on V12, so probably dice, and if it makes it in cursors, may or may not make it in.
Cursors would be a lot of fun.
That would be fun, yeah.
Ludovic, how about you? What are you most excited to work on?
I think it is for prototype 2 token animation and transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to its development.
For me, it's hard to choose a feature that's like that I'm excited to work on, but not because I'm excited for it to exist to use it. I mean, that's such an overlapping set, I guess. It's probably a hard thing, because probably I imagine for all of us, the things we're very excited about are ones that like we're excited about them because we play, or we are in games, or we're GMing games, and like we want the feature for ourselves just as much as we want it for all of you. But I think maybe for me, I think a little bit about like application v2 and specifically forms. I kind of have a like hate relationship with forms, I guess. Like they're so essential. Like you always need forms to allow the user to provide data. I like the data model much more than I like the form, though. I'm more interested in like what's the structure of the data than I'm interested in like how to make it editable. And so I'm really interested, I think, in V12, like, so for example, like ambient light configuration form. Currently, like this app is its own bespoke thing. Like it's HTML template, it's JavaScript handling, but it's not so different than any other form that we do, like a scene configuration form or a, token. I mean, actor sheets are different because they're system driven, but like an active effect configuration form, there's always like slightly different requirements for each of these, but they are all sort of basically like we need a form on top of a data model. And so I'm interested in application v2 in a way to like use a data model to create the form with certain parameters that basically like I don't need to verbosely define the ambient light configuration sheet and the sound configuration sheet and the wall configuration sheet. I just need to say like, I've got a wall model, let me edit this model, please. And then maybe I can like provide some customizations or tweaks on top of that to make it better. But I would love to be able to just define data models and then get forms for free. I think that's something that I am excited about.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. So much reduction in code, boilerplate.
Yeah, it would be a big
Swathes.
boilerplate reduction. Yeah, if we could do that. Yeah. All right, I think we better wrap up soon, but let's take a few final questions. And as we're doing that, I'd love to remind everyone that Foundry Virtual Tabletop is on sale right now. It is available at 20% off. It's giftable if you have a friend or family member who might love this software. It's the holiday season. Think about whether you want to pick up an extra copy. We appreciate that very much. Our first party adventures of House Divided, that you've been seeing a lot of the maps from that during the stream, is a very fun adventure for 5th edition, a tale of familial drama and gothic horror, and it takes some really interesting twists and turns. And so that's also 20% off, as well as The Demon Queen Awakens, which is a kind of gauntlet style dungeon against some really formidable high-level bosses. All 3 of those are on sale. There is also a sale happening on Paizo's store for some Pathfinder stuff that includes some of the products that we've made, like the beginner box, the Harrow deck, the token pack, Abomination Vaults, I think. And we also have Kingmaker Part 1 that is now... Kingmaker is out. It's on sale until Kingmaker Part 2 releases, which will be coming up pretty soon. So if you haven't bought Kingmaker yet, I really encourage you to. It's excellent. And we'll be publishing Part 2 of Kingmaker in December, at which point it will no longer be on sale. So that window remains open for a little while. All right, question from Pickers101. What's the one tiny feature you hope makes it into V12 but is 50-50 at best? Oh my gosh. That's like an impossible question, because there's probably about 1,000 issues that meet that criteria. I would say the one that's 50-50 at best is the one I haven't thought of yet, and it's really a matter of like, do I get it done in time to make stable or not? It's not so much like the things I have in my head right now are probably not quite 50-50, because they're ones that I know that I'm thinking about and I expect us to do. But
definitely had a few of those before that, like right at the end of the development cycle. It'd be really great if we could get this in. Yeah.
Oh, good call, Matt. Be sure to say hi if you're at PAX Unplugged this coming weekend in Philadelphia. I will be there. Perhaps 1 or 2 folks from the team will be there. We'll see. I'm still not entirely sure. But yeah, I will be around if anyone is at PAX. Please do get in touch. We love to meet you all in person, and you can just ping on Discord. We might create like a temporary channel for anyone who's at PAX if you want to like use that Discord channel to coordinate. We don't have a formal presence at PAX, not this year, Chaos, but just there to mingle and to say hello to people and to meet with folks. So there's a fan, I guess. And on business, we have a lot of like meetings with publishers and stuff, but no booth. All right, I think we've worn down to the end of the road for today's stream. Thank you very much to everyone who joined in chat, and thank you very much especially to Eber and Kim and Ludovic for staying up late to join me on our dev update stream. Really wonderful having you all with us. And I don't know, anyone have closing thoughts, requests, comments? All set?
Forward to V12. Yeah.
Yeah, really excited for V12. Can't wait for that. Okay, well, awesome. Let's leave it there, and I will see you all around. We'll be doing another dev stream, I'm sure, once prototype 1 is out and we're getting closer to prototype 2. We'll have a whole new batch of features to cover. We want to stay actively engaged with the dev community throughout the process, so don't hesitate to reach out later in Discord with any questions or thoughts that come to you later, and we'll be happy to work through stuff with you there. And yeah, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Cheers. Happy gaming.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
take care, everyone. Thanks very much.